celebrating after their match.
Yeah.
In the tag match, and it's very much like they're in solidarity. And Real American, they're doing the poses. Shawn's doing the Hogan poses, and then bang, out of nowhere, super kick. And I think at the time I was actually quite surprised. I was quite shocked that they were going to do it. So it wasn't something that I saw coming. Let's put it that way. How about for you, John?
Well, I think it was fairly inevitable, and like with a lot of what WWE and WWF have always done, some of their stuff can be seen a mile away, to be honest with you. And I think when you've got Shawn Michaels and Hulk Hogan tagging together, I think the next step is really, right, we want to see these two go at it as opponents, staring across the ring for one another. So how do we get there? I think whether it was predictable or not, it was certainly a fantastic moment. It really was a fantastic moment. I'm sure if you were live there in the audience when this happened, or watching at home, you would have been shocked. You would have been marking out for that moment. You would have, your chin would have hit the floor. But whether you predicted it or not, it would have been still a fantastic historical moment to lead us to where we're eventually going to get to. You could say, could it have been done the other way round? Could they have had Hogan turn on Michaels? But we're going to get to the whole babyface and heel dynamic, sure, I'm sure, throughout the conversation. But once again, I thought it was a fantastic moment, and it was a sweet super kick from Shawn Michaels as well.
It was, yeah, it was very well done. And at time for Hogan as well, he sold it quite well.
Yes.
It could have been terrible, but it looked good. Still looks good up to today. So
yes.
Now, a lot of people knew that I was going to be doing this podcast, John, and I had a few questions coming in about this that they wanted to ask us. And that was, in fact, two people asked this, actually. I got one from Stephanie Myers, I think that is, and Chris. And they both ask a similar question about, or one asks what's bigger, and then the other asks what's more of the icon versus icon. Now, it's an interesting one because they said, do we think that Hogan and HBK is more of the icon versus icon than, say, Rock and Hogan from WrestleMania 18? From a purist standpoint, John, where would you sit on that? What is the bigger match?
Oh, that is a tough question, isn't it?
And I landed this one on him. I didn't give many pre thinking of this either. So.
Let's have a think. I on paper, if I hadn't seen either match, which match would I most be drawn to?
Sure.
I would probably go for. I'd probably go for Rock versus Hogan because it was held at a WrestleMania. So I think because of the occasion, because of the setting, because of the whole spectacle of it all, icon versus icon, I think I probably would have opted for Hogan versus Rock. Because of the setting, you alluded to at the very top of the show, John. Is this kind of a forgotten match, SummerSlam 2005, Michaels versus Hogan, because it was a SummerSlam and not a Mania? Yeah. And had it have been at a Mania, would it have been more fondly remembered or remembered, as such a big match, which it was? And I think that the only thing that's hurting this was the setting. To be honest with you, was the occasion. I think both matches, in terms of icon versus icon, how big the matches are, they're both on a level with me, both equal standing. But I have to give the edge to Rock and Hogan because it was at a Mania.
Yeah, I totally agree with what John's just said there, and that's not just to be easy, but the only way out of it would be if it was WrestleMania, both of them, and it wasn't, then maybe there is an argument. It's very hard, though, to debate because Rock was massive at the time. And I think from a generational point of view, yes, Shawn and Hogan do have that magic because they really did have their own eras. But I still think Hogan and Rock is the bigger draw at the time. But that's just my opinion. But I think... but obviously, like you say, John, it's a fascinating one because this one gets tagged with legend versus icon, so slightly different wording, but yeah, we know where that's going, which is fascinating. And they also tagged this again, and I don't know how true this is because I know WWE can be very manipulative with their history at times, especially around Andre and Hogan. But they tagline this one, John, that Hogan versus Michaels for the first time ever. Is that the actual case, or do you think there was ever a time they might have worked somewhere years and years as a rocker or something? I mean, I don't know. They could be telling the truth for all I know, because I don't remember any standout. But I'm just wondering if there was like a house show. I mean, I haven't seen anything to make me think otherwise. I've looked, scoured everywhere, but apparently this is the case, which is quite a unique thing.
It is, isn't it? Because when it came to Hogan versus Andre WrestleMania 3, they were kind of advertising it as the first time these two had ever met. And of course, we know that they had faced each other a few times at least before over the years. I'm not aware of another Shawn Michaels Hulk Hogan match. That's not to say it didn't happen, because like you say, it could very well have happened, in a slightly different setting on a house show, for example. Maybe, I'm sure they've teamed up before, because you can imagine that Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, as part of the Rockers, were in some sort of multi-man match with Hogan, possibly like a Survivor Series type match back in the early 80s or late 80s or early 90s. But I'm not aware of a one-on-one match in any kind of setting apart from this one between these two. No.
Yeah, no, that's not what I've seen either. So I think, this is a good selling point, the fact that they've got this match. Now, what I like about this feud, because I do remember it quite vividly, is that they used the old adage, less is more, because there wasn't an incredible amount of segments between that happening with the super kick and then obviously towards SummerSlam. But to be honest with you, you kind of don't need to have a crazy amount of footage and segments and talking, because again, much like today, that's kind of where it gets lost sometimes. And this is very much less is more, and you can sell this match on the name alone, but it's like that impact on the super kick was just shocking. We kind of wanted to know where Shawn was going to go. We don't know why he's done it, etc., etc. And I think it left people like wanting more, but not getting it. And it kind of just reeled people in more, for me anyway. Yeah. And the other good thing is that this particular SummerSlam did have quite a lot of other matches and feuds going on. So they didn't really need to jam all this out with loads and loads of segments from Hogan and Michaels, but what they did do, the small parts they had, were quite impactful. Now, was you shocked, John, that around this time we start to see now that Shawn Michaels is obviously going to be the heel, and he kind of goes full heel, especially, of course, with the infamous Larry King spoof that he done, where he comes out with the with the walking frame. And, he's just absolutely having fun. I mean, if there's any closest we've ever got to the old Shawn Michaels, it was around this time, I would say. This is almost like Shawn Michaels returns, the old Shawn Michaels, for a month. And this is what you're going to get. He's just going to be that guy. Was you surprised that he was kind of doing these moments? And I suppose for us fans that know a little bit more about what goes on outside, you think they were sort of blurring those lines, and that there was... How much of it do you think was quite genuine that they sort of snidely put in there, John?
Well, I really enjoyed the build to this match, and the Larry King bit that you mentioned was classic, with the walking frame and Shawn Michaels all dressed up as Hogan. But I read somewhere that Michaels was told to kind of be more of the 1997 Shawn Michaels, be more of the 90s kind of cocky heel Shawn Michaels during this feud and during the match as well. And I think he did kind of live up to that, to be honest with you. I mean, as far as, how much of it was kind of a bit of a jab to Hogan or not, I'm not sure. I mean, usually... Hogan is kind of kept in the loop regarding what's going to be happening during any of his storylines. he has quite a bit of creative control. And usually when something is presented that's seen as a bit of a dig towards Hogan, he's normally fine with that sort of thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
He's normally okay and normally kind of in on the joke. He knows it's all business. And he knows it's a way to kind of, draw money and to bring people in and to, sell the main event. So I'm sure he was fine with it, but I think as far as Michaels was concerned, he probably took it as far as he possibly could to try and get a little bit of fun out of it for himself, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's looked like that way, which made it better for anybody watching that kind of knew the two narratives. One from a story point of view that we're watching as an audience, but also for people that know some of the ins and outs and politics as well, because there certainly was a lot of that. And, we do get some great little promos from Shawn Michaels talking about, what are you going to do when I don't lay down for you? And there's these little side remarks that you just wonder, is he really poking a stick at him about his politics and the years when it was, of course, very much the big man territory before him and Brett came along. And it is a very generational kind of feel to this. And it might be argued that, is this one of those other ones? I mean, at least we got the match here, but is this another one that we could have had Mr. WrestleMania against kind of another Mr. WrestleMania in a lot of ways? As you said earlier, John, like, is that why it doesn't get spoken about that much? But because I'm sure it would have been something they would replay over and over again when they kind of do those looking back stuff, 100%. But yeah, those things were really good. They stood out for me, a lot of the stuff they did with each other. Very much.
I've got a question for you, John. I mean, just off the back of that regarding whether this is, I mean, of course this is a WrestleMania caliber match, and I'm just wondering, had Hogan returned or maybe kind of agreed something with Vince McMahon sooner, way before WrestleMania 21, whether WrestleMania 21, we could potentially have seen Hogan versus Shawn Michaels in 2005 WrestleMania Hollywood instead of SummerSlam. I mean, it makes you think, had they have had the choice, this would have been a WrestleMania main event or a WrestleMania match. They probably would have replaced the Angle versus Shawn Michaels match with this, 9 times out of 10. So it makes you think, it must have been either the negotiations were kind of late on, or maybe there was some discussion about this possibly being a WrestleMania match either this year or maybe in subsequent years. But like you say, this does kind of shout all day long being a WrestleMania match and not a SummerSlam match, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. No, you're right, and that is a big. I mean, that's a big thing to it, isn't it? About could it have been big, much more than what it is? I kind of feel like it would have played nicely. Let's put it that way. But it depends, really. I mean, spoilers here, but a year later, John, Hogan does the exact same thing with Randy Orton. It's at SummerSlam again, misses WrestleMania, and they do the whole thing with Orton, which is a whole other thing. But it was strange, I guess. SummerSlam has been well renowned to having sort of massive, matches in the past. But I think around this time, SummerSlam, or there'd been a time where SummerSlam was just sort of another pay-per-view for a little while. That was the thing. And it didn't really stand out as much as it used to. But no, this was much better. Now, am I right in thinking, because I thought I'd done enough research, and then I thought, no, I've got to suss this out. So this is a bit off the cuff, but is this the moment where Shawn was jabbing at Brett around this time as well? And did he do that entrance that never happened? Was that around this time, or am I thinking of a completely different time?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure what you're referring to. Let's say this was around the time when I was kind of following wrestling, from the sidelines, but I can't remember that exactly. No.
I'm going to try and do my research through this while we're talking, because it just came to my mind, and I'm sure, because I remember, well, we'll get to the match when we get to it, but there were a few little bits in there that pinpointed to the Montreal Screwjob at that time. And I'm sure when they were doing the feud with Hulk Hogan, there was this moment where Shawn came out and You know, he was like, yep, the return of Bret Hart's going to happen. We saw his music come on, and then he just kind of plays with the fans that, you know, ha ha ha, fooled you again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just to get him. But this was part of his kind of being a heel at that time, and so he really did. He knew that the one easy thing there, John, to get fans to